was taught in Sunday school is wrong. And now Neelix kind of as our proxy stands in our shoes and faces that issue. So in terms of character development, I'm not sure I can articulate my question as well as I would like to here, but in terms of character development, mortal coil, where does that stand? We have an arc that goes from caretaker to, homestead. Homestead is episode. Where does mortal coil fit in that arc? It was a very complete arc. We talk about Neelix being the most human character. In a lot of ways, his character had one of the biggest arcs in the whole series.
It isn't until after the entire series has been completed and has receded that you can look back and say, oh, this is where this guy went from A to Z. You don't know at the time you're doing it. It's just right. One episode after another. Oh, this is this week. And in Caretaker, he started out as kind of nefarious guy. He was a bit of a straggler. He was a gambler. He was a junk dealer. He was a trader. And he was kind of down and dirty. And by the end, he's a fully mature family man who has confronted a lot of demons. But I guess, I don't know. Does everybody have a crisis of faith in their life? I don't think everybody does.
No.
But certainly, people do.
I think more people have crises of faith than are willing to admit they've had crises of faith. And I think that sometimes, this is just my personal prejudice, sometimes those who protest the most loudly that their faith is strongest for those who are wrestling inside the greatest doubts. Yeah. So Neelix comes out, and this all comes out now on the surface. Now we're going to do something a little bit different tonight in terms of format. Last time we kind of ran a Q&A session with our guests, then we threw it open. So what I'm going to want to do tonight is actually give you guys a chance to be in this conversation sooner. And my wife Kay has the handheld mic. But before we do that, before we go out to take audience input into this, I've searched my DVD collection of Voyager. You know what they left out in my collection? The scene where you and Kes break up. It's not included in my Voyager set. So tell me about that scene.
Well, that scene is not in. For those of you who don't know, Kes was Neelix's squeeze. And they
2 years old, I believe.
She was a comic. She was 2 years old, but she had the body of a 1-year-old.
Yes, she did.
I think that they were always a little ambivalent about the relationship, the producers and the writers, because of the fact that I was an older man and she was very young. And they wrestled whether it was platonic or was it not. And I believe we kissed once in the entire series. But in any event, they were partners. And they cared deeply about each other. And they did have a breakup. I think it was the show where she was taken over by what was called Warlords.
Yeah.
And in it, she became another person, like another being, and she lost interest in Neelix and decided he was a buffoon. And then she was cured, I think. But after that, they never pursued us as a partner anymore. It was just. In fact, there was a scene where Neelix confronts her in the science lab, which was a standing set, which we very rarely used. Once every 10 episodes, there'd be a scene in the science lab. And I remember particularly the scene, and I said, I understand. I said, we need to talk. And we, in that scene, got some closure with each other and decided that. It came to accept the fact that her feelings had moved on, and I was able to accept that, and we quote unquote broke up with some equanimity and respect for each other. And I don't remember much about the scene because it was cut. It was cut from the final episode. But I was always felt that was wrong. I thought that the fans certainly wanted to see that come to a kind of conclusion, and I don't know why they cut it, but. They did.
Yeah. Now, I bring it up because I think that Neelix's relationship with Kes was such an important part of that character arc. And I felt let down was a very touching relationship. I think that a lot of your character was developed in the context of that relationship.
Yes.
To not know what happened to that relationship, to me, I feel a little bit cheated. That's why I asked, we talked about this earlier, that's why I asked the question, because I think people need to know that the character actually had that moment.
Yeah.
It just didn't show up.
It just didn't.
Anywhere on screen.
They cut a lot of scenes. You know, they would film and things drifted by the wayside, particularly if they didn't have to do with the plot that week. You know, I mean, there was a great scene I did with Kate where I made her coffee cake. It was one of the sweetest scenes we ever did, but it never showed up in any of the episode. In the episode, I mean, I remember several, and every character.
Yeah.
Things they wished had stayed in,
but the plot wasn't advancing in that scene. I get that. Just the other night, we watched the director's cut of Wrath of Khan. I hadn't watched that in I don't know how long. Wrath of Khan, and you know, I knew what was not part of the original release, and it was all stuff that was kind of interesting. But as you say, it didn't.
Yeah.
The plot wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Things were kind of standing still in those moments.
That's the thing, whenever you get one of those DVDs and they have deleted scenes, do you ever watch those deleted scenes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always the most boring scene. Here she is in the parking lot, you know. Oh, on the way to the office. Well, the real scene's in the office. Why do we have to watch her walk through the parking lot? And why do they cut it? You know?
Obviously. It's like sometimes you buy these CD sets of, you know, Bob Dylan and it's all the unreleased takes and alternate takes, and usually what it does is it confirms that they were right the first time around. Anyway, let's throw it open now. Let's bring the audience into the discussion. Kay's got the mic. If anybody's got something they want to throw into the mix right now, don't say I didn't give you the chance.
What was the most difficult trait that Netflix had that gave you difficulty getting into?
We're going to make you repeat that question.
What was the most difficult trait that Neelix's character had that you had difficulty getting into?
Well, he was, that's a good, what was the most difficult trait? They wanted him to be, and they encouraged me to be exuberant and loving and gregarious and stuff. And I'm somewhat like that in life, but I'm not that much like that. So I had to kind of exaggerate that part of myself. Interestingly enough, the most difficult things about playing the character were purely technical. The makeup was very warm. It's difficult to describe, but if you can imagine a mattress glued to your head. It's kind of what it was like. And then on top of that, they added, the fellow who made the costumes, who's a brilliant guy, Bob Blackman, used, the material for my costumes came from drapery, couches. You know, I mean, to get this weird material and these weird designs, he kind of used upholstery. So you know how hot that is. So on top of that, with the makeup, it was phenomenally difficult, and the teeth had a tendency to pop out when I got emotional. And actually, I remember one day I used to write about 4 in the morning, and they'd turn the air conditioning on. So by the time we did our first scene at 7, it would be cool for me. And everybody was always complaining about how cold it was, and to me it was great. But one day they forgot to do it for whatever reason, and they didn't turn it on until 9 or 10 a.m. and it didn't kick in until like 12. And around 10 o'clock in the morning, I was doing a scene with Kate, and for me it was sweltering. And I was screaming at her, and at the same time my teeth popped out, and I sweat so much that the makeup just went. It was like somebody had filleted me. And everybody was laughing so much we stopped for like a half an hour, and we couldn't even continue. We had to go all that time. But those are the hardest parts of it, you know. And you have these contacts on them, which you can't even really see. I mean, the first month they were bright yellow, but by the 3rd month they had faded. And they were always late in getting a new pair. And they were like, so you know when you take your sock off and you have a little indentation in your leg? When you took them off, you had this pain in your eye for about an hour, so I never took them